There are people who rule over this realm and other planets. They are the original humans who have unlocked the key to eternal life. And one day the truth of this fact will become known, as I cannot disclose all the details here. What I can say is that to them, planets are like inheritance, and even given as birthday gifts to their children. Some of them even complain like spoiled children that one planet is not good enough, or that they want another planet instead, just like an ingrate child. To some of them, it's nothing, and planets come and go. To them, reincarnation is when a person is born under the exact same star pattern and alignment as another person in their family from the past. Thus, they have almost the same exact appearance. They can appear intransient. They are so far advanced that their technology cannot be explained. It is only easier to get some kind of idea nowadays because of the rise of science fiction. In days of old, people had no idea what they were seeing, such as demonstrated in various myths, legends, and religious texts, which is why many of them don't make any sense when taken literally. They are even more advanced now than then. They are constantly progressing, just as the people of Earth are progressing. Although at times the people of Earth go backwards into involution, should the Persian bloodlines and Sabbatean Illuminati New World Order, etc. see fit. Sometimes it simply may be due to an inevitable catastrophe that affects everyone and cannot be helped. Other times, it could be some kind of enemy from afar who is an even greater predator than those in charge. What they say goes. Whatever fashion or music is the in thing is because of their decision. One rarely creates something new and then gets noticed for it. As it comes from above, those who are in charge say what is the in thing and what is now out. That is the reality that we live in, and when they want something gone, they will get rid of it, as they have done time and time again. I know this because I have had the opportunity with meeting and speaking with these horrible, selfish, evil people, and I have also had to fight many of them. Yet I couldn't have done it without some help. I have also had the opportunity to meet people of other nations and islands unknown to the general masses, who are good people and want change for the better. They are very intelligent, living under natural law, free from all the garbage and brain rot of this reality that we live in. They are what I call real humans. Most of us would feel pretty dumb around them, although it is simply that most of us are in a stage of ignorance, and so they were understanding of this fact when we spoke together, and revealed to me many things regarding the truth of this realm. Now I share some of these things with others to help wake them up. That is my purpose. My name is Frankie Traino, also known as Shigana or Sigan. I'm an Italian-born Australian with deep roots in Japanese heritage. My lineage traces back to Lord Tyrannus, the ancient founder of the League of 12 City-States of Etruria, a legacy that gave its name to the Tyrrhenian Sea. It is from this ancestral connection that much of my knowledge, insight, and mission arise. Over the years, I have revealed many hidden truths to which challenge accepted history and provoke thought. I have shown, for example, that the story of the 12 tribes of so-called Israel is in fact a retelling of the League of 12 Etruscan cities. I have presented the case that ancient Jerusalem, originally known as Salem, was located not in the Middle East, but in Calabria, southern Italy. I have also proposed that the Leaning Tower of Pisa was once the true Tower of Babel. These are just a few of the many controversial insights I have shared in my videos and writings, including the deeply interconnected Japanese-Etruscan connection. I present the idea that the Etruscans were the original founders of Japan, and that their sacred knowledge continues to flow within its living traditions. What I am about to share with you is not speculation, but the result of decades of study, personal spiritual experience, and ancestral memory. My role is not merely that of a researcher or theorist. I am a living participant in these ancient traditions. This knowledge comes from my bloodline as a descendant of Lord Tyrannus, my initiation into the Oborozuki Ryu clan, the clan of the Hazy Moon, my training under my late master, Hiro Musashi Sensei, whose teachings were passed down to me directly, my lifelong studies in esoteric systems such as Kabbalah, the wisdom of the Sufis, and the living traditions of both Japanese and Etruscan mysticism. I am the founder of the Order of Mercury, of the True Order of Light, and the Shindo Fushin Ryu Dojo, and I teach a system known as Obi-Ichienzo, Shindo, as well as a philosophy I call Gnostic Paganism. My work is available through books on Amazon and numerous videos online. I make no effort to enter into theological debates or find consensus by debating common ground. What I offer is for those who feel called to truth. You are free to accept or reject it. Yet if you are already awakening, already beginning to glimpse the hidden architecture of this realm, then what follows may help fill in the missing pieces. In this presentation, I will speak of the forgotten kingdoms of Japan, or Zipang, Etruria, and Rome, true rulers of the old world, whose architectural marvels are scattered across this realm. The mystery of the moon, the Tartarian kingdom, and the immortal pantheon of the 13 deities who rule over this reality. The figure of Tsukuyomi Omikami, the moon god of Japan, who is also a Lalu of ancient Sumeria, Sin, or Hermaphroditus in Roman Greek, a hermaphroditic being whose names are many, but essence is one. The true meaning of ancient beings such as Tengu, goblins, gnomes, dwarves and centaurs, not fantasy creatures, but code for actual racial groups or jinn who were often misunderstood or mythologized across cultures. I will show you how beings like the blue-skinned jinn of Arabia and India were not gods or demons, but human communities practicing ancient traditions such as the ingestion of colloidal silver, which turned their skin blue and mystified outsiders. The Japanese Tengu, or long-nosed goblins, translated directly as heavenly dog, are nothing more than Hebrews, for instance, and this is the same for goblins and so-called dog people, depicted in medieval art and across old world maps, because they came from the star Sirius, also known as the dog star. And that is the true meaning of the Tengu and the dog people, also known as goblins. For more, see my video on this channel on the subject by browsing my videos. What I share is meant to awaken, not entertain. It is a call to remember who we are and to reclaim the sacred inheritance long buried beneath layers of control and distortion. You will encounter Greco-Roman, Etruscan, Japanese, and Gnostic teachings all converging towards a unified truth. And at the heart of it all lies the wisdom of the 13 immortals, the core council behind all major mythologies and spiritual systems of this world. Above them are the Buddhas, or light beings, of the higher realms, a subject for another time. For now, know that Tsukuyomi Omikami is not only a deity, but also a bodhisattva, a luminous being bridging heaven and earth. So with this in mind, let us begin. May the truths within awaken what already sleeps inside you. At the dawn of Ma, when Shindo was first whispered upon mortal lips, there was a secret hidden in the silver glow of the moon. Tsukuyomi no Mikoto, also known as Tsukuyomi Omikami, the unseen hand, wove the threads of fate in the stillness of the night, bending the light of the moon to form the Taizokai, the matrix realm, where shadows of the past whispered of a lineage beyond the reach of mortals. This he did in order to save the world from oblivion. I had learned that the mirror of Tsukuyomi Omikami is the moon itself. The hidden realm and the fall of the old world. We live within what may be described as a planar sphere, or more precisely a pocket plane. In traditional Japanese Shinto cosmology, this world is not a singular flat reality, but a dimensional tapestry composed of layered realms, all interwoven through unseen pathways. These realms, known as the domains of the Jin nations, Jin, which also means people in Japanese, and goes back to the Jin mentioned in Middle Eastern texts, were once accessible through sacred portals and ancient architecture, built by those who understood the spiritual geometry of the earth. In ages past, these portals allowed for dimensional travel, linking our world to others through the planar sphere. Yet today, these gateways have been sealed. The sacred corridors of the old world have been deliberately closed, barred and concealed as a result of the destruction carried out by a hidden force, the Sabbatean, who now govern through the masks of modern states and global institutions. These Sabbateans are not merely political actors, they are the antithesis of the sacred. They loathe the original royal lineage. They despise the legacy of Rome, the Etruscans, and the Japanese. They are the enemies of the spiritual, the noble, and the morally rooted. Their hatred gave rise to the Illuminati, fueled the French Revolution, which saw the slaughter of divine royalty and laid the foundation of the New World Order. They were nearly vanquished during the Second World War, but the attempt failed, and now the world bears the cost. With this context, we can begin to understand the architecture of the old world, why it holds such power, why it resonates with us so deeply, and why it was deliberately replaced. This ancient architecture is not merely aesthetic, it is a form of green magic. It reflects the natural law. It is built in alignment with divine proportion, cosmic harmony, and sacred material, wood, stone, glass, and metal. The old world was not abstract, it was alive. It mirrored the spiritual in physical form. It empowered those who dwelled within it, grounding them in truth and connection with the earth and the heavens. Today, the opposite is true. We live in a world of false architecture, cold, chemical, and lifeless. Our cities are forged from petroleum-based materials, synthetic compounds designed to disconnect us from our essence. The built environment no longer reflects the spiritual, and as a result, human beings have become abstracted from themselves, made malleable, confused, and estranged from their origins. History has been falsified. Ancestral pride has been demonized. National identity once a wellspring of empowerment and cultural memory, is now branded as a threat, while true unity, the kind forged through shared reverence and interwoven destinies, is suppressed. But those who seek truth still remember. I do. They are drawn instinctively to the old world fairs, to the forgotten beauty of domes, arches, and geometries that speak a language their soul remembers. These are echoes of a world that once was, a world where the remnants of the Roman Empire ruled with grace from the west, and the Tartarian Empire maintained harmony from the east. Together, they balanced the realm, creating a civilized and honored nature, spirit and sacred form. That world was destroyed. It was the Sabbateans who overturned it, those same forces that now govern and dictate the rules of this diminished reality. Thus, before we begin our deeper journey into old world architecture, before we rediscover the secrets of green magic, let us pause. Let us orient ourselves to the truth of the realm we inhabit and the legacy we've lost. What follows is not fantasy, it is memory. Let us begin. Architectural Gnosis and Green Magic. Old World Chicago, Chilaga, 1893. Remove not the ancient landmark which thy fathers have set. Proverbs 22:28. The idea of architectural gnosis and green magic is to live in a world whereby the buildings and monuments complement the natural environment. In following elven lore, pagan and Masonic architecture is built around nature rather than removing trees, forests and lakes, etc. to build in their stead, as is the unfortunate circumstance of our modern world. In mythology, elves are symbolic of the Tua di Denan. In dwarven lore, it is a means by where stonemasons can take the very rock of the earth itself, where suitable, and carve it into a masterpiece for the entire world to see, turning the ordinary into divine. In some cases, the very faces of rocks have been carefully sculpted into masterpieces and sacred temples which modern man has failed to replicate. Dead trees and dried up lakes can then be used for other things. Dead trees can be carved upon, and the dried up lake can be built upon, etc. By the proper use of zodiacal alignment, Masonic buildings are made to last many lifetimes. They tell a story of past, present and future in the now. After millions of years, they become mountains again due to the natural formation, something no cheap modern building can ever do. We need to recreate a world where these things can be practiced again in order to maintain harmony with nature the way it is supposed to be. Here is some of what remains of old world Chicago. Roman-style architecture with a new Japanese garden. While there is still beauty to be found on Earth, the world has, in part, become a junkyard, a wasteland, and it's choking in layers of miles of cement. The ancient roads were all the ancients needed, even the Romans. Yet now, all of a sudden, modern man needs more, and more, and more. Wait a moment, what has happened to the natural environment? Where are all the trees and wildlife? There are not enough natural surroundings left for wildlife to make their homes in because modern man has taken them away. Yet mankind pretends to care about the extinction of species? The worldly person does not understand the ecosystem, nor do they know how to compensate for natural losses. Instead, they believe that something which is not making any money is a waste of space, a space full of monetary potential. They don't see a sacred space, they see a blank slate ready to be painted as they so desire. They are full of idiocy and don't even realize that soon there may be nothing to spend their worthless coins on at all. Ancient coins were made of gold, silver and bronze, having natural intrinsic value in the metals alone. But nowadays we have paper, plastic and numbers alone. Although closely related to this topic, it is but another subject. These same individuals, these losers who hold worth in worthlessness, would see the destruction of stonemason and Gothic architecture, etc., in order to replace them with garbage. These people only have half a brain. They do not contain the individual aptitude that the Greeks and Romans and the Tartarians used to have, and the original royalty. These people today who rule were the descendants of criminals. They basically came straight off the streets. They have no idea, it's not in their blood, it's not in their genetic makeup to even be rulers. They're not suited for it. They were never supposed to be. It is therefore unnatural for them to even have any authority over the way things should be whatsoever. The new rulers only have half a brain. Today, our money is worthless. Our modern structures are worthless, and plastic trees and gardens, etc. are worthless. The idea is to create something which is as good for the ecosystem as well as being pleasing to the eye, one with the other. The stonemason performs the great work on three main principles: wisdom, strength, and beauty. In wisdom, we are considerate and understanding to where our world or cities are located, and how it is positioned astronomically and environmentally. Thus, great care is taken into considering the materials which are used. In strength, we build firm structures to last many lifetimes, whilst holding value and energy. In beauty, we build masterpieces that complement their natural surroundings. Reflecting on the world's transformation, I mourn the loss of aesthetic beauty and natural wonders. I compared the exquisite architecture of bygone eras to what I perceived as cheap and uninspiring modern designs, blaming the Bavarian Illuminati, who I saw as responsible for the decline, and the Bolshevik Revolution. I mourned how magnificent cathedrals and other remarkable structures had been demolished. I urged others to explore evidence out there supporting my perspective on the demolition of treasured monuments. Have it be known that the Roman Catholic Church did no such thing. It was the Sabbateans. The Church only built on top of ancient structures and made various additions, as the Church actually took Proverbs 22:28 seriously. They did, however, find loopholes such as defacing statues, the relocation of treasured monuments, and covering the genitalia, etc. It is generally the mainstream Mohammedan mercenaries and Sabbateans responsible for most of the demolishing and vandalism. As these primitive-minded people do not represent the values of high society. All three main religions, however, are theotarded, meaning that they are theologically retarded. While I don't care for either of them, I do hold much respect for the Gnostic Sufis, and I do not in any way put them in the same category as mainstream Islam, which is an abomination. My deep love for architecture found its roots within the magnificent cathedrals and buildings that dotted the cities of my youth. The grandeur of those structures inspired me to follow in the footsteps of my ancestors and carry on their legacy. I feared for the fate of the world as I witnessed a transformative dawn brought upon by a secret Gnostic cult of death that rules the world. They governed with an iron fist, pushing forth what they labelled as progress. However, in my eyes, each new structure erected was a betrayal of the architectural wonders of the past. They replaced masterful craftsmanship with cheap and nasty materials, casting a shadow of mediocrity over the once magnificent world. They teach that there is no wrong and there is no right. Can you believe that? I had been particularly affected by the World Fair held in Chicago. The vivid images captured the grandeur and sophistication that once defined the world. Thoroughly researched, I uncovered the truth behind the claims that the structures were made of mere plaster. As a mason myself, I knew the exquisiteness that lay beneath the surface. They weren't made of plaster, they were patched up with plaster, and they made additional pieces to the pre-existing buildings that were already there. You don't make that kind of stuff out of plaster and then demolish it. I mean, what a waste of money and time. No one does that. It's ridiculous. And why would you leave it out in the open to be weathered for 3 years? I mean, you'd think that they would have covered it if they wanted to preserve it. Yet they claim that, there's pictures of plaster falling off, and that proves that they were made of plaster. No, that was the pieces that they had patched up over the top of the pre-existing building. The dismantling of those majestic monuments felt like a personal affront to the passion and dedication embedded in each brick and stone. With heaviness in my heart, I longed for the resurrection of the pagan paradise that these places once had been. I yearned to restore the glory that my ancestors had left behind. However, I stood alone in this desire. Now I know that there is quite a vast community out there interested in this stuff, and I'm glad that they're doing something about it by talking about it and bringing awareness to people. The world seemed to have turned a blind eye to the beauty that lay dormant beneath disposable creations. Determined to make a difference, I devoted my life's work to preserving the remnants of architectural marvels scattered across the globe. Through meticulous documentation, I archived the history of these structures, ensuring that their stories would transcend time. So I hope that my endeavors will eventually garner attention, attracting like-minded individuals who share my unwavering dedication to architectural preservation. And I see more people starting to talk about this now, so that was a surprise to me, and I'm glad that they're doing it. Thus the world awakened to the realization that true beauty transcends time and cannot be contained within the confines of fleeting trends. Tsukuyomi Omikami, the moon god, does not want ugly cities of cheap and nasty materials, most of them a blight upon the environment. The ancients made use of stained glass windows. Stained glass windows often show geometric patterns, which go on to demonstrate the type of frequency that your body, which is 75% water, will be tuned to inside that particular building. For instance, inside many cathedrals are huge organs with brass pipes that produce such a frequency with the aid of acoustics provided by geometric infrastructure, so that everyone in the congregation can be tuned into that healing frequency. By this, I am speaking of the previous civilization that were responsible for building these structures, not the church who simply moved in to fill the vacancy. When we look at the Duomo Cathedral of Milan, said to be built for the devil, it is easy to figure out that such a rumor was fabricated to account for the pagan imagery all over the building, which instead of demolishing because it was too good to get rid of, they decided to convert it into a Catholic church, hence why they needed to fabricate a backstory. It is important to know that when they say things like the devil, they mean the old religion or the old world. Here is the Milan Duomo Cathedral art depicting the evil papacy who took over this pagan property of the old world. On the top of these buildings, we notice that the old world buildings had metallic beams and balls that could harness energy from lightning and the ether. The large hollow balls on the buildings actually contain mercury within them, which acted as a conductor. Everything was built to provide free electricity and free water for all. Such knowledge is suppressed because it is a threat to the established system, as there would be no need to pay for water and electricity, thus no need for the current slave system funded by the Rockefeller mafia family. The artificial materials used in the construction of modern buildings, etc., do damage in the unfortunate circumstances of fire and earthquakes and cannot be recycled when they are no longer needed. Over time, more junk is collected, yet never dissolved, only to remain there in all of its hideousness. All that wasted matter equals less room. Junkyards get bigger, and there are places where acres upon acres of junk cannot be dissolved. The earth has become a product of man, but the earth is a product of the great Father Mother God. To damage their product is to suffer the consequences. The earth is getting sick, but it is capable of looking after itself, because when it has had enough, we will know that it has had enough. Dead Sea Scrolls warn of such times: earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, meteor showers, asteroid collisions, floods, heat and plagues in great abundance, and the collapse of national and world currency. Think it not strange that these things must come to pass, because when they come to pass, they shall be for a sign of my soon return. Here is the silver scroll, Herodistu speaking. The ancient Chinese, Japanese, Etruscans and Romans believed that surrounding ourselves with beauty helps us to feel good inside. The more we gaze upon beautiful things, the more beautiful we become. This is very true, which goes to show what has happened to our society today. We look upon so much ugliness that we need to escape to places like botanical gardens and forests and go camping just to be surrounded by beauty and harmony. Look at ancient China and Japan, and then look at what has happened in the event of modern cities which have suffocated much of the ancient temples and structures of those great cultures. Look at ancient Greece and Rome, and look at them today. The buildings are broken down, the pillars have fallen, the temples lay in ruin, and the statues of the gods and goddesses are defiled. Why have these places not been restored? They stand as a reminder of the beauty that once was, a beauty that is only imagined in fantasy. Here is a picture of an Etruscan woman with jeweled armor and forehead protector, neck brace, wrist braces, and jeweled girdle. For instance, the armor that people wore in the old world was made also to empower and heal the body. The gold, silver, copper, brass, bronze, etc., with crystal gems, and the antenna like horns and decorations on the helmets are capable of healing the body and allowing the warrior to produce greater ki, life force energy. We need to go beyond the fantasy and bring it into a reality, because there is no such thing as fantasy, as the world is constantly created by thought. Much of what we knew as science fiction in the 60s is now a reality. It is continuing to become a reality. Think about it, how much technology do we have today that would have seemed unbelievable only 30 years ago? In a way, there is no such thing as fantasy. Architecture is an extension of what is on the inside. By looking at the modern structures next to the old ones, we can see that it is the old ones that are most pleasing to the eye, because they hold something sacred within every human being. Most of our childhood stories were based in worlds of extreme beauty and magic. So when we look at those masterpieces, we are drawn back to childhood. It is by being childlike that we may behold the throne of the great Father Mother God. Over time, there have been certain groups of people who have strived to maintain the beauty of the old world, even when difficult to do so. Such groups as Masons, Gnostics, Sufis, Mormons, Shintoists, and pagans alike have strived in such work. The more time is spent in these special places, the more time slows down. It is as if they are a world of their own. The stones and materials were purposely used because of the specific energy within them, which can be felt as soon as one is to glance upon the work, even more so while standing at the entrance. Many stories are told in their mere shape alone, and so much symbolism is imminent for all eyes to behold, such as Roslin Chapel in Scotland, famous for its Masonic and Druidic symbolism, including the numerous green men that can be found all throughout it. They speak to us on an inner unconscious level, so we flow back to them. We want to awaken that which is dormant within us. The stones of these buildings were cracked from a mountain, then roughly shaped with hammer and chisel, then carried by oxen to the quarries to be smoothed. All this work was done by the hand of a human being. Mastery over the elements is dwarven law. The gardens around and through these places are the will of the elves. Birds and other creatures find habitats within them, thus human and beast can live side by side. This is fairy law. Pagan law is the absolute obedience to these divine laws, as demonstrated in Eden. The natural law will save us, humans, beasts, nature and all. Above is a depiction of the Mormon temple in Salt Lake City, Utah. This wonder of Masonic workmanship is said to have taken 40 years to complete because of the great political turmoil its people, including its stonemasons, endured in order to complete it. The truth is that the stone masonry and blocks for the temple, unlike the common narrative, were already there. It belonged to a previous civilization, the same people who inhabited the white city of Chilaga, yet it was never finished. Its people left in a hurry. Since the unfinished stonework was already there, all the Mormons had to do was finish what remained, creating some new pieces and decorations, as well as make the interior with the work of master carpenters, etc. When they first found the temple unfinished, they believed that Heavenly Father had provided it. There were many such vacant places all over the New World, and there are Mormon accounts of such things, and migrants simply moved in and claimed what once belonged to the Romans, who had found America, America, long before them or Christopher Columbus. In Japanese, amaru means to be left over or plenty, hence Amaruka is the land of plenty. If the Mormons really built this temple from scratch, then why are there not any others after that, built in the same style? The Mormons arrived in Utah in 1852. In the city of Manti, half of the houses are vacant. There are houses enough empty there to accommodate 50 or 100 families. In Iron County also there are similar advantages. We will fill up these mountains, take up the land, and, as they used to say in the States, become squatters, and we will become thicker on the mountains than the crickets ever were. The Journal of Discourses, a discourse by President Heber C. Kimball, delivered in the Tabernacle, Great Salt Lake City, October 7th, 1852, at the General Conference, reported by G. D. Watt. The original people lived in harmony with the local native tribes who saw them as gods and goddesses when they first arrived in their extravagant clothing and armor, and there are pictures available of this. Here is an antique map depicting people from Renaissance Italy and Native Americans. These Romans rose to a great height and left this world during the Renaissance period due to the rise of the Church of Rome. Here is a Renaissance art depicting lights in the sky. Note, the same kind of architecture we see at the old world fairs, etc. People ask, where did all these people go? Why were all the cities vacant? The truth is, they left this planet. Those who remained were mass murdered during the French Revolution, and their remains can now be seen in the catacombs of Paris. Take its kingdom back from the misguided lies. Cosmism, an introduction to the crystal spheres. The cosmos is an ocean of worlds inside crystal spheres. However, outside the crystal spheres, the ocean itself is composed of nothing but a rainbow ether that sometimes forms rivers between worlds. The gods and goddesses fear this gassy ether. The question is, why? The term actually has two meanings. It is either the space in between the crystal spheres that houses the worlds, or the actual gassy ether that covers it all. Either way, technically speaking, they are all one and the same. The density of this ether, or some would call it ethereal fluid, fluctuates in the vast void, forming rivers and currents between worlds. As a substance, it is extremely interesting. Quite simply, nobody knows what it is made out of. It is not composed of any material or any element known to any world. The crystal shell that houses every single world is particularly designed to prevent this ether from ever entering, and it does this job very well. The crystal shells cannot be pierced, cracked, or broken, and furthermore cannot be harmed or manipulated by any god or goddess. Natural portals open every so often on the shell that allow passage from one side to the other, so these portals do not let the ether through. All this being said, the reality is that nobody knows what the ether is, and while on that topic, nobody knows who created it and what its purpose actually is. Nobody knows who created the shells that keep the ether out, or what kind of power keeps it from breaking. There are, of course, many dangers that exist within the depths of the ether. The key element with ether in this regard is that it is extraordinarily flammable. Gods and goddesses have no access to the ether. They have no power in the ether. This is why they fear it. People have gathered their own theories as the truth about the ether and the crystal shells that surround all the known worlds. Of these theories, 6 have gained some ground. Quote 1. The gods and goddesses created the shells and the flow to divide up their territories. Theologians love to advance this argument, but it places some limit on the powers they worship. Space is infinite, even for an omniscient deity, so they broke it up into chaos, the flow, and order, the shell. The shells are easier to handle, and more orderly than the swirling chaos outside. The gods and goddesses then divided the spheres up amongst themselves to test good versus evil and law versus chaos. Some demigods have claimed this to be the truth, yet note that they would do so even if it were not so. 2. The gods have gods themselves, which created the cosmos and let them loose in it. A troubling thought, though a school experiencing a rebirth recently experienced their gods and goddesses at very close range and found them wanting. An unprovable theory, since it leads to the obvious light of reasoning. Well, if our gods have gods, why don't we have beings that think of us as gods? 3. The ether is a naturally occurring object. The gods and goddesses created the various shells to settle and domesticate it. The rainbow ocean is like a stream, and the shells are like cities being built along the stream. Eventually the cities will join and the stream disappears entirely. This would explain most godly reluctance to talk about a part of the cosmos, the flow, where their power doth not reach. 4. The gods and goddesses fear the flow and build the shells to keep it out. 5. The gods and goddesses fear mortals and other sentient beings and build the shells to keep them in. 6. The ether and the shells are naturally occurring. The gods and goddesses only moved in and set up shop. Someone or something else built the house, and the gods and goddesses just arrived to move around the furniture. Disliked by theologians because it implies that the powers that be are no more than adventurous interlopers in their own right, playing the last of the most powerful races as saps and suckers with a load of bunk about creating the cosmos. As with the other theories, it cannot be proved." End quote. In the end, most people are divided into two main camps: those that surmise that the crystal shells were created and positioned by the gods and goddesses themselves to protect their worlds from the ravages of the ether, and then there are those who believe that such shells were placed by an even higher authority than the gods and goddesses in order to keep them and mortals inside and confine their activities. The reality is that crystal shells do indeed keep the gods and goddesses inside, where they possess no power over worlds, where they don't have a dedicant following. So now, taking it back, to answer the question, why do gods fear space? They fear it because they have no control over it. They have no power over it, and they cannot see in it. It doesn't really seem that the gods and goddesses have the ability to change or manipulate the crystal spheres. This lends credence to those who believe it wasn't made by them, but maybe by some other higher authority. A scary thought, since if anything were to even happen to the crystal spheres, and ether were to get inside, it would mean complete annihilation for both immortals and mortals alike. The ether would touch the sun and create an explosion so big that it would destroy all the planets inside, killing every living member within the sphere, and with no mortals in their realms, the gods and goddesses would lose their powers and also die.
Solid granite and ridiculously solid.
It's a crystal, nothing more.